Good morning, Pak Joni.
Morning, morning.
How are you?
Okay, all good. Busy like everyone.
Good morning, Pak Joni.
Morning, good morning, everyone. Good to see familiar faces here.
Yeah, we are here also with Vice Rector for Academic Affairs, Professor Sudi Mukasi. How are you?
Okay, all good. Busy like everyone.
Yeah. Good morning, Pak Joni.
Good morning, everyone. Good to see familiar faces here.
Yeah, we are here also with Vice Rector for Academic Affairs. Itu suara dari mana ya? Live stream. Sudi Mukasi.
Okay, all good. Busy like everyone.
Yeah. Coba kita tes. Masih balik lagi nggak suaranya? Pak Hongki, siapa yang bisa jawab dari Zoom ya? Yang bisa jawab dari Zoom,
Sudah aman, Pak.
Ada yang bisa? Pak Kosa, halo.
Aman, Pak, aman.
Sudah aman, sudah lebih bagus.
Atau Bu Luisa bisa menyampaikan
Bagus,
suara
Pak.
via Zoom?
Jelas, Pak.
Sudah nggak muter.
Jelas ya?
Jelas,
Sudah
Pak.
nggak muter.
Jelas, Pak.
Oke, terima kasih. Tapi jam dia kan jam 9. Dia mengatakan masih terlalu awal. Too early. Saya bilang kita 7:30 dimulai di sini.
Tapi berarti Ibu melepas yang negeri ya? Tadi berkejar-kejar, ya paham. Tapi Ibu tetap PNS atau tidak?
Yuk kita mulai.
Okay. Good morning, Father Johnny, the Vice Director of Academic Affairs of Sanata Dharma University, Vice Rector of International Affairs of Sanata Dharma University, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our workshop on Learning Paradigm, Ignatian Learning Paradigm, hosted by Teacher Training and Education Faculty of Sanata Dharma University. I'm Christina Cristiani, your moderator today. Distinguished speaker, Father Johnny, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, before we start, we will have our opening prayer. Okay, I'm going to lead in a Catholic way. In the name of our Father, the Son, of the Holy Spirit, Amen. Heavenly Father, we come before you today with gratitude in our hearts for the opportunity to gather virtually as a community. We acknowledge your presence among us and seek your guidance as we engage in the discussion and reflection that lie ahead. Lord, bless each of us in this virtual space. May our words and thoughts be filled with wisdom, compassion, and understanding. Amen. In the name of our Father, the Son, of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay, let me proceed to the next session. We will have the opening by our Dean of Teachers Training and Education Faculty, Bapak Dr. Andes T. Sarkim, PhD. Time and screen is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Christina. Good morning, Father Johnny. Good morning, Professor Sudi. Good morning, Dr. Cecilia, Academic Affair for Collaborations, and Professor Sudi Mukasi, Vice Rector for Academic Affairs. And for all my colleagues who are here, I may tell Father Johnny that we are here in the room. There are about 25 lectures, and also we see that there are 32 participants via Zoom. So this is a hybrid webinar. In this very fresh morning, very nice weather. We are going to start our semester for our staff to refresh, to rejuvenate, and to renew our understanding, our belief about Ignatian pedagogy. We are going to implement in our courses this semester. We still have 3 weeks before we start to teach, so we have time to reflect on and to prepare our lecture this semester. So I'm very glad to have you here, Father Johnny. Here also we have Father Hendra is here in this room. We will discuss this later after this webinar. So I think I would like to thank you very much to Father Johnny, and also terima kasih banyak kepada Bapak Ibu dosen Romo yang sudah hadir baik di dalam ruang ini, di ruang seminar LPPM, dan juga via Zoom, dan juga kepada Profesor Sudha Mungkasi, Wakil Rektor 1 yang telah berkenan hadir dan nanti akan mewakili rektor membuka webinar ini. Mari kita belajar bersama-sama untuk kita perdalam tentang pedagogi Ignatian. Terima kasih.
Okay, thank you, Pak Sargem. We are going to proceed to the next coming speech from our Vice Rector of Academic Affairs, Professor Insinyur Sudi Mungkasi, PhD. The time and screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Ibu Nani, for the time. And good morning to Father Johnny Go, Ibu Cecilia Tutiandari, Pak Sarkem, and colleagues, brothers and sisters. It's really a good time for us to renew, to refresh our knowledge about Ignatian pedagogical approach. And in this opportunity, we are really grateful to have Father Johnny Go from Ateneo de Manila University as our speaker. And we believe that we will learn a lot from him. I've checked from the internet. Well, to be honest, it is my first time to meet Father Johnny Go. Even though it's online, it's still my first time. And I've seen that Father Johnny Go is really an expert, and he has a lot of experience in a number of universities relating to pedagogical approach. As we know together that Ignatian pedagogy is chosen to be our approach in serving our students for their education. And there are some challenges nowadays to implement any approach in our learning, in our education. First, I will mention at least 2 challenges. Well, of course, there are a lot of challenges, but I will mention 2, which I consider as big challenges. The first is how to implement Ignatian pedagogical paradigm in this digital era. Usually, in a classical approach, we meet our students in classrooms, but in some occasions, we also meet online, such as this time for this workshop, we meet online. So how to implement this approach if we do not meet our students directly face-to-face? The second challenge that I have noted is how to measure or to quantify that Ignatian pedagogy values has been achieved by our students. This is because Ignatian pedagogy values are much more to be our quality of education and not quantity. However, we also remember that our efforts, if we can, it is better that we can measure or we can quantify whether our efforts has achieved our goals. So still there are many other challenges that we may face in implementing any approach in our education services. And in this time, we will learn together in this workshop. Especially, we will learn a lot from Father Johnny Go. Thank you very much that Father Johnny Go is able to be together with us online. And we welcome all participants in this workshop. On behalf of our rector, the workshop is officially open. Thank you very much. God bless.
Thank you very much, Professor Sudi Mungkasi, PhD. Ladies and gentlemen, let us now proceed to our main activity. We are going to have Father Johnny to explain more about his presentation. And I'm sorry, I think now I'm not in Zoom, so I cannot share my PowerPoint to introduce him. Okay, so Father Johnny Go S, EDD. He is the director of the Science and Arts of Learning and Teaching Institute at Ateneo de Manila University, the Philippines. And today is going to present his thought and also his best practice in relation to Ignatian pedagogy. Father Johnny also released a book entitled Learning by Fraction, a Practitioner Guide to 21st Century Ignatian Pedagogy. Without further ado, I would like to give time and screen to Father Johnny. Thank you, Father Johnny, for having us with you today. Thank you. You can start your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I would like to thank everyone, especially Dr. Sar Kim, PhD, for inviting me to this webinar. I just want to check if you can hear me. Can you make a thumbs up if you can hear me? Okay, thank you. So yeah, so I'm really happy to have been invited to be here. I think it's a privilege to speak to more than 50 teacher educators, no, from your esteemed institution, Sanata Dharma, which has a very long history of educating and training teachers. I'm currently the dean of our School of Education at Ateneo, and the school is only 3 years old. So compared to your school, we have so much to learn. No? So I'm really happy that I've been invited to share with you a little bit about Ignatian pedagogy. No? So I'm sharing my screen with you now. Let me see. Okay. So I don't know if you can see the screen, no? Okay. Okay, so the talk, after conferring with Dean Sarkim, I thought I would just call the talk a 21st century approach to Ignatian pedagogy. I think all of us who work in Jesuit schools and universities are very keen, we're very interested in implementing Ignatian pedagogy. But as mentioned earlier, the problem is we're not sure how to go about that. No? So this is the reason why we came up with a particular approach to Ignatian pedagogy, and I hope this approach will be helpful to you. No? This approach is called learning by refraction. No? So I'm hoping that the talk today will be helpful in that sense. No? I would suspect that all of you are already familiar with Ignatian pedagogy, with the 5 elements of Ignatian pedagogy: context, experience, reflection, action, and evaluation. I got involved in Ignatian pedagogy because over 10 years ago, I was appointed head of a K-12 school, a Jesuit school in Manila. And one of my jobs as the president of the school was to make sure that we promote Ignatian pedagogy. However, during that time, when I brought up the idea of Ignatian pedagogy, our teachers sort of weren't very happy. And the reason is they felt that there was a problem with Ignatian pedagogy. Many of them felt that it was either a burden or a magic formula. What do we mean by this? We had a lot of teachers who really took Ignatian pedagogy seriously, but it became a burden to them because they would make sure to include context, experience, reflection, action, and evaluation in their lesson planning. But it did not really make a difference in the learning and teaching in the classroom. It was just a burden. It was just a routinary thing that they had to do whenever they prepared their lesson plan. So that's one group of teacher. Another group of teacher did not use Ignatian pedagogy in their lesson planning, but they kept using the words almost like it was a magic formula. So we had these two extremes of teachers who felt that Ignatian pedagogy was not really making a difference in their teaching and in the learning of their students. That is the reason why at that time, that was back in 2001, when I began, I decided maybe we should study Ignatian pedagogy a bit more closely. How can we make sure that Ignatian pedagogy can really help our teachers rather than burden them or just give them slogans and cliches that they use but will not really make a difference in their teaching practice. So many years later, in 2018, on the 25th anniversary of the publication of Ignatian Pedagogy, A Practical Approach, we published a book, Learning by Refraction. The subtitle is A Practitioner's Guide to 21st Century Ignatian Pedagogy. So this pedagogy is obviously based on Ignatian spirituality, but what's I think different about this approach is that the approach was conceived by practitioners like myself, and the audience, the intended audience, would be practitioners like yourselves. Many of the beautiful writings about Ignatian pedagogy prior to this were very theoretical and almost esoteric. So much so that teachers always ask, how are we going to apply this? But what we have done is we've talked to people who have been using Ignatian pedagogy for many years, people who've committed mistakes in practicing Ignatian pedagogy and learned from them, people who've developed best practices. So we consulted people all around the world, and we came up with a manual that we hope teachers, both in basic education and in higher education, will be able to use. In the slide, you see our Superior General, Father Arturo Sosa, holding the book. He's never read the book. We just asked him to hold it, and we took a picture so that we can sell more books. That's actually the truth. So just to be honest with you. But the book has really been received so well, not only in the Philippines, not only in Asia, but all around the world. I think because it's a practitioner's guide. It's very practical. In fact, as of today, the book has been translated to English, to Spanish, to Brazilian Portuguese, to Chinese, to Polish, to Dutch, and to Thai. And we're expecting 4 more editions. One of them is Bahasa. Dr. Sarkim was telling me that Sanata Dharma is working on this. But aside from that, we also have a French version, Japanese, and Italian coming up. So I think the success of this approach is really because of its practical approach. And I'm very eager to hear what you think about it after I introduce it to you today. We've been holding a lot of on-site and online training courses, starting 2018 in Chiang Mai, Thailand. But even during the pandemic, we held a lot of on-site online courses, masterclass in learning by refraction. No? You can see we've been to Dublin, Australia, to Spain, no? To Adelaide, of course, in the Philippines. No? So we've been building this network, no? Of Ignatian educators, no? In Europe, in the US, no? In Asia Pacific. And now we are training our colleagues from West Africa, no? That we're training them online. So I think we're really learning a lot from all the people that we are training, no? As a result of that. No? For today, for our workshop today, for this 2-hour session, I would like to not so much give you lectures, no? But to sort of offer to you what I call conversation pieces. No? These are ideas, pieces of insights about Ignatian pedagogy that I hope will provoke you into thinking and talking, no? Or to use Ignatian, the Ignatian language, to provoke you into reflection, no? To reflect about Ignatian pedagogy. And that really means pausing, no? And connecting the ideas I offer you to your practice. No? Because the only way, as we know, for ideas to become meaningful, we have to contextualize the ideas. It's important for us to make sure that the ideas are connected to our own experience. No? So in this Zoom room, no, are gathered a lot of veteran educators and teacher educators. So you will have encountered many examples, no, of best practices, but also difficulties and problems in practicing Ignatian pedagogy. No? So what I would like to do is to really just ask you to connect the ideas that that I will share with you, no? And hopefully you can share those ideas with me so that we can sort of hear from one another. Okay. I don't know if there are questions before I continue. If there are no questions, we can continue. No. Okay. So I hope that that's okay. No? I hope that's okay. Okay. Yeah. So hold on. Okay, so what we've done actually is we have actually come up with some short videos, no? So what I'd like to do is share with you a short introductory video, no? This is the English version. We already have versions in Spanish, French, and also Thai, no? But I'll just share with you the English version. It's very short, no? So.
Learning by refraction. What do learners do so that they will learn? We say they need to refract. The reason is we learn by refraction. Refraction? Yes, you heard it right. Refraction has 2 dictionary meanings. Let's take the first one. The bending and change of light, radio waves, etc., as it passes through a different medium. Have you noticed what happens to a ray of light when it goes through water? It is bent and changed. It ends up refracted. That's why when we're standing in a swimming pool, the bottom looks closer than it actually is. Learners need to do the same thing with what they're trying to learn. They cannot simply let the content go through them or reflect it back exactly as they have received it. True learning requires the learner to change the content, bend it, and make it their own. Only with refraction does learning happen. But the word refraction has another meaning that can also be used to describe the learning process. The dictionary tells us that refraction also refers to the measurement of the focusing characteristic of the eye. That's what eye doctors do. They refract our lenses, but they do it by practicing trial and error. They try on a lens, ask their patients if they can read the letters flashed before them, then they keep adjusting it until they get to determine the right prescription. When you think about it, that's also what learners ought to do. Learners need to experiment, explore different ways of understanding an idea, and make self-adjustments. Only then can they truly learn. Here are a couple of questions for you to think about. As learners, when has learning been refractive for you? As teachers, when have you caused refractive learning?
Okay. So that's the introduction, no, to learning by refraction. So if I may just sort of maybe summarize, no, the most important thing really is that we want our students to change what they have learned. We don't want them to just parrot what the teacher has said, no. We want them to make it their own, to change it, no. So so learning by refraction, we don't want our students to reflect everything they've learned 100%, no. Now, I'm using the word reflection here in the scientific way, no, where like a mirror reflects everything back 100%. We don't want our students to parrot us, no, or to parrot the textbooks, no. We want them to unpack and change the ideas and make the ideas their own. I think all of us will agree that this is the real meaning of learning, no? When somebody just memorizes and repeats everything, that's 100% reflection. But what we want is refraction. We want our students to change the ideas, contextualize them, and make them their own, no? So learning by refraction, the main idea here is learning requires refraction. We want our students to appropriate the content and not just parrot the textbooks or the teachers. Now, for us who wrote Learning by Refraction, we thought that this is a wonderful metaphor to express what Ignatian pedagogy wants our students to do. You know, we want our students to reflect. We want them to make a difference, to become persons for others and with others. No? But they can really do that only if they refract. No? So this is the central metaphor, the central symbol for this approach to Ignatian pedagogy. You know? So maybe the question here, and I'd like to begin with this, why do we need to do IPP? And why learning by refraction in particular? There are three reasons. No? The first is to become more Ignatian. Sanata Dharma, like Ateneo de Manila, is a Jesuit university. No? And we want our Ignatian values to be caught by our students. No? We want our teachers to model the Ignatian values. We want our students and our teachers to be steeped in Ignatian spirituality so that the character of our university will be truly Jesuit and Ignatian. But when you think about it, the best way to do this is in the classroom, because we have our students in the classroom the most, no? The longest time, no? Whether that classroom is being held face-to-face or whether the class is being held online. The teacher is interacting with the students, so it is a great place, no, for us to promote Ignatian spirituality and Ignatian values. And the best way to do that is to use Ignatian pedagogy, because Ignatian pedagogy is about academic and formation programs. No? So that's the first reason. The second reason is to become more relevant in the 21st century. One of the things we found out, no, when we were working on Ignatian pedagogy is, number one, when the first Jesuits started the schools, you know, actually the Jesuits got into schools by accident. No? St. Ignatius of Loyola did not intend the Jesuit order to be an educational order. No? He wanted the Jesuits to be all over the place, no? To be very flexible, whatever the greater need was. But what happened was that soon after the Jesuit order was established, immediately there were many requests for Jesuits to open schools. No? And the Jesuits did not know anything about education. They were not trained in Sanata Dharma. They were not trained in, they were not certified as teachers. No? So what did they do? They went to what they call the supermarket of education. No? And they chose whatever best practices were already available then, that were compatible with their values, and that's what they use for the Jesuit schools. No? In a sense, that is our tradition. No? Our tradition is to be innovative by learning from other people and building on them. So one of the things we learned also is that when we were trying to understand how best we can practice Ignatian pedagogy, we learned that Ignatian pedagogy is very compatible with all these 21st century learning principles. No? Somehow, all these things about visible thinking, about understanding by design, about project-based learning, about inquiry method, all of these are very compatible with Ignatian pedagogy. So that's another reason why we should go for Ignatian pedagogy. No? So first of all, to become more Ignatian, to strengthen our Ignatian identity, not only in the school culture, but in our classroom practice itself, which is where the students are most of the time. Just to say a little bit more about that, no? Ignatian pedagogy is really based on Ignatian discernment. No? Most of us, if we're not discerning, we just react to our experience. The moment we have an experience, we react immediately and we react impulsively. No? Ignatian discernment, no? Ignatian spirituality is about pausing for a while, no? Before reacting. We reflect first before we decide and act. That is what Ignatian spirituality is all about. So as you can see, the elements of experience, reflection, and action of Ignatian pedagogy have really been borrowed from Ignatian spirituality. No? So that's how we are promoting Ignatian spirituality through Ignatian pedagogy. No? The second thing is to become more relevant in the 21st century. You know? And I already mentioned to you that the first Jesuits went to the supermarket of education. No? And we did the same thing as we were studying Ignatian pedagogy in the 21st century. And we saw that many of the things that we're teaching our teacher students, no, about how to become more effective educators can all be organized and classified under Ignatian pedagogy. No? And the approach of learning by refraction really sort of draws from 21st century learning principles to make Ignatian pedagogy more effective. No? So what I'd like to do is, again, show you a short video to illustrate what 21st century education or 21st century learning is all about. No? So let's watch this video.
Defining 21st century learning. Speaking of learning, there are two common ailments that seem to afflict many of our students today. Both conditions are best observed in them after they take an exam. The first is academic amnesia. Have you ever observed how many students forget everything 10 minutes after regurgitating all the content they've memorized for an exam? The second ailment we can call intellectual constipation, when the student's knowledge about a subject matter is so rigid that they don't really know how to use it beyond the test. What could be the reasons for these afflictions? Students suffer from academic amnesia because they've made no connections among the concepts they've memorized for the test. If we don't have an organizing framework for what we've learned, we'll have no way of retrieving them for future use. Imagine a library with no cataloging system. Students are bound to get lost because they don't know where to go to find a book. The reason why students suffer from intellectual constipation, on the other hand, is that they've not been guided on how to use and apply what they have learned from the outset. Learning used to be defined in terms of knowing, or worse, recall. That's not going to be adequate in the 21st century anymore. Learning today has to include understanding and application in the world. These are the key components in the kind of learning that we consider essential in the 21st century. For example, students may know a lot of significant dates and names associated with historical events, but all this factual knowledge does not guarantee learning. Students should understand the significance of these events, their underlying causes and implications, as well as relate these events to other historical events and justify how their claims make sense. In short, they need to understand the content and apply what they have learned. To promote understanding and application, refractive learning emphasizes two student tasks that are central to learning, namely reflection and action. By the way, that's another reason why we call it refraction. Reflection and action are the defining elements of learning by refraction. If you say reflection and action fast enough, you end up with refraction. So what should happen when students engage in learning by refraction? They experience, they reflect, and they act. Unless students reflect on their experience, they will not understand. Experience is indeed the best teacher, but only if accompanied by reflection. Moreover, unless students act on what they have learned by applying it in real life, they will not learn. This diagram captures the distinctive characteristics of refractive learning. Refractive learning is about understanding and application, which result from the learners reflecting on their experience and acting on what they have learned. Do you recall an instance in your own teaching practice when your students learned in the sense that they understood the content and applied what they learned?
Okay, so I'm gonna stop here for a while just to maybe in the chat box ask you to write down your impressions of the video you just watched. Was there anything that struck you? I'm sure many of the things you discussed there are familiar to you. For example, the 21st century learning isn't about memorizing. It's about understanding and applying what you have learned. No? But the message of the video is that this is exactly what Ignatian pedagogy is all about, no? Because of reflection and action. No? So may I just invite you to maybe just write any kind of reaction, no, on the chat box so that I can get some kind of feedback also from you. I'll give you a minute or two for that. No? By the way, was the audio clear of the video? The audio was clear? Sometimes there are issues, no?
It's really clear, Father.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Christina. No, so she captures it. No, meaningful learning is by reflecting and acting from their learning. That really captures the whole thing, no? Because today, if a student only memorizes or remembers but does not understand, that's not really learning, no? At the same time, if a student understands but does not use it, that's also not learning, no? So for learning to be complete, no, as Decan Facultas, I don't know, wait.
Dr. Sarkim.
Dr. Sarkim said, yeah, so refraction is really, I think, a metaphor that we can use, no, to express this new kind of learning in the 21st century. Okay, so I'll just go on. Just feel free to write your comments, no. Yeah, so that's the thank you, no, thank you for that. But yeah, it's the difficult part is how do we apply it to class? That's always the question of the best educators. What are examples of this? How do we apply it? No? So thank you. So let me go on. No? So what I'm going to do really is so basically what the earlier the video that you watched earlier said, no, is that learning by refraction really focuses on understanding and application. Two very important values in education today. No? But what we're saying is that through Ignatian pedagogy, no, we can help our students understand because there's reflection. And application is nothing but the action element, no, of Ignatian pedagogy. So if an educator designs his or her course using the principles of Ignatian pedagogy, which focuses on reflection and action, then true 21st century learning is going to happen. No? So what the book does, the workbook actually that we have come up with, has many exercises and examples, no, of how we can go about this. No? So for today, I think I won't have time to go through both, no? But so I will maybe try to focus more on understanding through reflection, because reflection alone there's a lot of examples there, a lot of strategies, no, that I would like to sort of introduce to you today. You won't be able to master it today, but at least you have an idea of what kind of approach learning by reflection is compared to other approaches to Ignatian pedagogy, no? Okay. So, but before that, I just want to say a little bit more about becoming relevant in the 21st century. You know, it's important. I think more than ever. No, earlier it was mentioned that will Ignatian pedagogy still be possible? No, when we are on online classes, no? When we are not face to face. The quick answer to that is more than ever. I believe, no, that Ignatian pedagogy is needed. No, in this age of social media and generative AI, no? As if social media wasn't complicated enough for educators, now we have generative AI. No? So just a little bit about this. As we all know by now, and I get this from the Center for Humane Technology, you know, a group that's really fighting hard that technology will be humane. No? We know very well that there are many benefits to social media, but there are also many unintended consequences. No? There are many effects that are not desirable. No? And I think we see that already in our students, but also in ourselves. No? For example, this thing called cognitive fracture, no? The lack of attention span. This is true not only for students, not only for young people, but even adults who are heavy social media users like myself. No? So the internet has promised an increase in productivity, plus productivity. But what has happened, the unintended consequence is a minus in focus. No? So there's been a leap in information, communication, and collaboration. This is a very good example. This Zoom webinar we're having here. I am not in Yogyakarta, but we are able to communicate and collaborate and exchange information thanks to technology. No? But there are unintended consequences. No? The constant shift of focus, less attention spans. No? And as we have seen in the US and also in the Philippines, I don't know about Indonesia, there's greater collaboration. No? On the one hand, the internet can provide collaboration, possibilities for collaboration, like what we're doing now, but it has also polarized people politically. You know? That's very clear here in the Philippines as well, with the Marcos regime and all that. No? I don't know about Indonesia now. No? I'm not familiar with the political climate, but the internet, because of the algorithm and so on and so forth, it tends to polarize people more. No? I just want to share with you this finding from Dr. Gloria Mark, who had a very interesting study called Attention Span, no? A book called Attention Span. And the subtitle is Finding Focus and Fighting Distraction. So she conducted a study, no? And she realized that we all live in a distraction environment, no? An environment full of distraction. So we constantly need to exert an effort just to hold a single train of thought. Think about that, no? Just to keep one single train of thought, we have to exert a constant effort. It's almost like defying gravity. No? We have to keep trying to fight gravity just to concentrate. If we don't fight gravity, we will be distracted because of the environment. So what study did she conduct? What she did was she measured, she quantified the number of seconds a person stays in one screen on the computer before moving to another screen. No? So she found the average number of seconds per screen. And as you can see in this graph, no, there's been a downward trend from 2004 all the way to 2023. No? For example, no, in 2004, the average number of seconds before a person would look to another screen because he or she is distracted was 150 seconds. In 2012, about 10 years later, it was half, 75 seconds. And last year, 2023, it's 40 seconds. This shows us that our attention span is really getting shorter and shorter. This is the data that supports that. No? What we've been noticing anecdotally is really supported by data now. No? Now, to make matters worse, there's generative AI. I don't know about Sanata Dharma, but Ateneo de Manila has been on panic mode because we've been wondering how to deal with this when it came out 2 years ago. Now we at least have begun to formulate our principles and policy guidelines. But generative AI is also disrupting and changing education. We know that it's a powerful and disruptive technology that is transforming education and many other industries. Because it's a powerful technology, there are many new implications, there are many new questions and new responsibilities, and it's all changing a lot every month because as those of you who are into science and technology know, the technology is changing very fast. And there are new competences and dispositions needed. So the old set of competences and dispositions may no longer be very relevant. Now, I'm not a specialist in generative AI, but what I found very helpful is this thing, that it learns patterns from information fed to it. So if you feed it text, images, and audio, it's going to learn from it. And then it's able to create content using the language that resembles it. So it sounds like the original information fed to it. But what is important is that generative AI mimics human language and not human thought. So it knows the patterns of language very well. So it mimics human language. So it sounds very real. But as far as we know, it cannot think yet, as far as we know. Okay, so this is very important for me because I'm not an expert in generative AI. Now, I think we educators have been reflecting, what are the implications of generative AI like ChatGPT to our teaching? And basically, it's telling us content is no longer relevant. Content is not so important anymore. We already knew this from before, but content became even more irrelevant now because of ChatGPT. Because ChatGPT can produce content, very good sounding content, in seconds. Better than the teacher, better than the student. So if we're still teaching content, which is, I think, the traditional way in many universities, including Ateneo. We keep saying we want 21st century learning, we want student-centered learning, but if you go down the corridor, it's still a lot of teachers teaching, lecturing, teaching content. So basically, one insight that has come out from this is that we should not focus on the product of learning anymore, but on the process of learning. So we should not focus on the content, but we should focus on the thinking and learning process of the students. So our teaching should aim to improve the ability of our students to think and to learn rather than focusing on the content that they should know. And no longer relevant in the age of AI are the following: teaching as supplying content. If our teaching is still primarily supplying content to students, that's no longer relevant because ChatGPT can do that. If our learning, the learning we promote among our students, is primarily knowing and creating content, again, this is not relevant anymore because ChatGPT can do that easily and faster and better than the student. So basically, the move here is don't just teach facts or content, which unfortunately many of our teachers and educators in the Philippines are still doing. I don't know about Indonesia, but rather we should design a process of learning where students critically evaluate and form judgments. In short, they can be critical thinkers. And this is where the IPP becomes more relevant than ever. Because experience, reflection, and action, and context and evaluation, all these elements are actually what we call design elements. The IPP for us is a way of designing the learning of the students. So basically, what we hope is that IPP can help us design learning so that students do not outsource experiencing, reflecting, and acting to ChatGPT. Because experiencing, reflecting, and acting are part of the thinking and learning process that is so valuable today. In short, today, content is cheap, because ChatGPT can easily whip that up, no? But process is more precious than ever. So the proposal, the idea we'd like to propose to you is that if we use Ignatian pedagogy in an effective way, we will actually be able to respond to the challenges of education today as a result of ChatGPT and generative AI. Okay, so I'm going to pause here for a while and just look at the chat, in the chat box. If there's anything, no. So there's a question here. Can we call refraction as the unique characteristic of Ignatian pedagogy, which distinguishes from other pedagogy? That's a very good question. I would say that yes, it is a distinguishing factor, no, distinguishing feature of Ignatian pedagogy. But I think we also have to be honest enough to say that 21st century pedagogies also promote understanding and application, but they don't use the word refraction. No? Again, many people, when they talk about IPP, they ask, but what is original about IPP? No? But I think the answer to that is, that's not a good question, because even the first Jesuits were not concerned about originality. They just used whatever was going to help them promote their values. They went to the supermarket of education. What makes Ignatian pedagogy original is the way we combine things together. No? So I would say that it's a unique characteristic, especially the word refraction. No? But I think we have to say that this is also being done. Other pedagogies in the 21st century also recognize the importance of understanding and application today. No? And then there's another question here. Is it possible to say that reflection and action are reciprocally related? The same thing means that after someone understands through reflection, it is hoped that the person can implement what we understand through action. That's an excellent observation. No? Reflection and action should go together. No? However, I think it's important to also note that unfortunately, it's not automatic. No? As we know from our own experience and from our observation of our students, just because they understand doesn't mean they're going to use it in real life. No? And a very good example of that would be morality. No? People may know what is morally correct, what is morally wrong, but it does not necessarily follow. They will apply that in their life. No? In the same way, the competences that they acquire in our subjects, no, may not be necessarily applied also. No? So here's a question that I think all educators are asking. How can we improve our students' critical analysis and problem solving through refraction? That's going to be precisely the point when I talk about reflection. No? Because reflection is all about our students understanding all the different ideas, no? But not stopping there. They also have to make a judgment. Which among these ideas is the most sound, the most solid? And that's where critical analysis comes in, no? And problem solving. Okay. How to accompany the students in the experience stage when they learn the content through the generative AI tools? Yeah, that's again a great question. No? I think I don't know what Sanata Dharma has already done in terms of policies and practices for generative AI. No? But in the Ateneo, for example, we have said that we would like to welcome the technology of generative AI with measured enthusiasm. We want to be enthusiastic because there are many affordances, there are many benefits, but there are also many risks and limitations. No? So what we encourage our faculty to do is to talk to the students, no? And basically tell them, number one, we should think of generative AI as analogous to a person. No? In short, if you ask a person to answer the questions in the exam, that's cheating. So if you submit the exam question as a prompt to ChatGPT, you are cheating. You cannot do that. No? So let's use the metaphor of a person. No? If you ask ChatGPT for help, no, it's the same way as asking a person or a textbook for help. So you have to cite it. No? So it's important to clarify that. No? And then at the same time, we've also told our students that the temptation in generative AI is that you outsource your thinking. And if you do that, you are not going to learn. The person who's going to learn is generative AI. No? So if we don't use ChatGPT properly, the experience, no, will be lost. No? So if a student just relies on ChatGPT all the time, no, then he is not doing the experiencing himself or herself. So that's a very good question. So how do we design the learning so that the students will do the experiencing themselves? No? So for example, let's say I'm teaching a doctoral course now in education. And of course, in doctoral courses, as you know, we assign longer readings. No? It's very tempting for students to just submit the PDF to ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to summarize it, right? And usually the summary is quite good. Usually, sometimes it's not good. No? Now, can we monitor our students? We cannot. No, unless you want to spend all your life sitting with your students, no, or we cannot do that, no. But we can have a chat with our students and say, if you do that, you will lose the opportunity of experiencing reading a text, an academic text, and trying to understand on your own. Certainly, you will be more productive. You will be faster. You will get a summary, but you will get the product of the text, but you will lose the process. No? So you will lose the experience. So for us, for now, the best way to go about this is just to have an honest conversation with our students and to point out to them what they will lose if they outsource the experiencing to ChatGPT. Okay. So anyway, I hope we'll get more into that as we learn about learning by refraction. And finally, is reflection only needed after experience? Isn't reflection also needed after action? No. That's a very good question, because when we show you the cycle of experience, reflection, and action, actually it's iterative. No? And as you have pointed out, Suwarsono, as you pointed out, no, it's you do experience all the time, you reflect all the time, and you can also apply all the time. No? So the stages are really artificial. We've separate with the stages are distinct, but they're not separate. No? In short, in one moment, you can be doing all three. So, for example, during assessment, the student should be reflecting and experiencing at the same time. No? But they are distinct moments. Okay, they are distinct moments. Okay, so let's go on. So thank you for the participation. Many good questions, no? And unfortunately, we can't go through everything, no? But the big idea so far is that what is beautiful, I think, about IPP is it's about designing the learning of our students. And it's very relevant today because now we can try to prevent students from outsourcing the process of experience, reflecting, and acting to ChatGPT. That's the main challenge to us today. Okay. So, so we need to sort of have some shifts, no, in our roles, and so I'd like to show you another short video so that you can see what some of these shifts, no, or makeovers are. Okay, so hopefully this will provoke us to think about our practice also.
Wanted, student and teacher makeovers. If this is how refractive learning looks like, how can we teachers encourage our students to engage in experience, reflection, and action? By paying attention to the roles we teachers play in class. The roles we take in class shape the roles that our students take. The most common stereotype for teachers is the expert. We try to make sure that we are the most knowledgeable person in the room. The problem is, if we insist on playing the sage on the stage, our students are encouraged to act like mere passive sponges that are supposed to soak up everything we throw their way. Another traditional role that we teachers take is the role of performer. It's hard to forget those naturally charismatic teachers who always delivered the most fascinating lectures, or those who never failed to entertain us with their humor. There's never a boring moment in their class. The problem is, Often when we teachers are that good, students end up acting no more than passive spectators. A third common stereotype for us teachers is to act primarily as the inspector. This role of inspector calls to mind the so-called terror teachers who take their assessments very seriously and whose sole mission in the classroom is to ensure quality control. But what role do students end up playing in such a classroom? Just products to be inspected. Our learners cannot become refractive learners if they are expected to act like sponges, spectators, or products. If they are to engage in experience, reflection, and action, learners need no less than a makeover. They need to take on the more active roles of inquirer, meaning maker, and creator. Learning begins with experience. The more holistic the experience, the more likely will learning happen. The student's experience should not be limited to sitting through lectures, but also include more varied and more active tasks. In order to engage in experience, the learner needs to assume the role of an inquirer. Their teachers need to pique their curiosity and encourage them to explore and investigate the subject matter on their own. Learning is an active and personal experience that learners need to conduct for themselves and take responsibility for. When learners are given the opportunity and the guidance to reflect, they don't just parrot what their teachers are saying, but actually get to construct their own understanding. In order to reflect, students need to act as meaning makers. When learners reflect on their experiences and the information they find, when they seek patterns, connections, as well as different perspectives so that they can draw their personal insights, that's how learning happens. Without action, there is no value in learning. Students need the opportunity to use and apply what they have learned in a way that not only demonstrates their learning, but also enables them to learn more in the process. In order to act, students need to assume the role of creators. Learners learn more when they are asked to create something, when they are given the chance to apply what they have learned. The application of learning extends learning. If students are to act as inquirers, meaning makers, and creators, our teachers will need some kind of makeover. The traditional roles of expert, performer, and inspector will no longer be adequate. Instead, teachers will have to level up and take on a different set of roles. For refractive learning, teachers too need no less than a makeover. They need to consciously assume the roles of designers of experience, facilitators of reflection, and coaches of action. Among these three types of teacher makeovers, which one, in your opinion, would your students benefit the most from?
Okay, so maybe very quickly, I just want to ask you in the chat box, if you look at all the educators in your school, in the teacher training and education, what would you say the majority tends to be among the three? Is it expert, performer, or inspector? No? Expert, performer. Can you choose one and just type it in the chat box? The majority, not yourself, but the majority of your colleagues, would they be expert, performer, or inspector? All of them are very good. No? All of them are valuable. Okay, so far we have 2 experts, 1 inspector. Can we hear from the others? So a lot of experts, and that's great, because if they don't have expertise, the university's quality will not be good. No? Yeah. So the point being made here really is that it's valuable to be an expert. It's valuable to be a performer if you have the gift for it. And it's valuable to be strict also about the quality, to be an inspector. but they're not enough. No? They're no longer enough. If that is your repertoire as an educator, you need to expand your repertoire to include becoming a designer, no? Becoming a facilitator, and becoming a coach. And note that each one of those corresponds to the three elements of Ignatian pedagogy. No? So to design the experience, to facilitate the reflection, and to coach the action. So that's really the goal, no? That we hope teachers will be able to sort of consider. No? Now, looking at those three new roles, no, of becoming a designer of experience, a facilitator of reflection, and the third is coach of action. In other words, you're coaching your students how to apply their learning. Which one do you think is the most difficult? Just based on the limited discussion that we've had. The book sort of dives deeply into each one of them. But given this limited discussion, based on your understanding of it, which of the three do you think will be the most difficult for your school? Can you choose from designer, facilitator, and coach? Can you just type it in the chat box again? Again, this is obviously not a scientific survey, no, but it's just good to find out what people think. No? Some people said facilitator, designer, coach. Okay. Yeah, it's almost like there's no clear. Well, designer now is coming up, no? Yeah. It's none of the three is easy, no? To design an experience, no? Because we're so used to teaching content, no? To design an experience so that the experience of the student isn't just listening to a lecture, and to design an experience so that it is aligned to the learning outcomes. Now, what AUN calls constructive alignment. That's not easy. That takes practice, that takes training. No? To facilitate reflection is also not easy. No? It's so much easier to just tell the students what we want them to think. No? But to allow them to reflect on their own, that's also not easy. And a few of you put coach of action, but actually that's also very difficult. No? That means you want your students to already apply what they've learned, and you can give feedback, no? So that they can improve their learning. No? So for example, if you want them to apply a particular skill, no? You should be able to give them feedback so that they can improve that skill. That takes a lot of time also. So these are the challenges if you want to take Ignatian pedagogy seriously. Okay, I'm going to stop here and just ask if there are questions so far. Because that's already a lot. I'm giving you some kind of crash course, actually. No? We actually have a full course on Ignatian pedagogy. No? So this is just an overview. No? And what I'll do after the question and answer that we're going to have now is I'll focus on reflection a little bit, no? Just to show you how we're trying to promote that. No? But let's stop here first for some question or comments. So feel free to type in the chat box or unmute yourself, raise your hand virtually, and just speak up, no? In the room.
Sorry, Father Johnny. Actually, we also have some offline participants here. Maybe they also want to ask you questions because some of them might not be joining us in Zoom. Okay, so maybe before we have questions from the chat room, I'm going to also give some opportunities for those in this room to ask questions. So maybe.
Okay, I didn't know that. Thank you for that. Thank you. I think that's a great idea.
Thank you. Anyone, please, from the room, if you want to ask questions? Is that Pak Giarto? Sorry, because I did not wear my glasses, so I cannot see the faces. Sorry. Could you please mention your name, anyone, if you want to ask questions from this room? Okay, while we are waiting, maybe also if there are some questions we found in the chat box, please also, but for the time being, we do not have questions, Father.
That's okay. That's all right.
Thank you.
Because I know it's a lot, so it takes time to sort of process, no? To process the ideas. But I'm hoping that at least I'm giving you the overview, and the idea here is to provoke you to think about your own practice, no? And to think about your students, the future teachers that you are forming. No? How do you think this will be acceptable? Actually, that's one question I would like to ask you at the end of my presentation, to ask you if you think this is something possible. No? If the goal this effort of trying to level up the way we teach, the way we promote learning, is something feasible. No? We always tell our participants, our workshop participants, that we are not after a complete overhaul. No? It's important to just improve on certain aspects. So, for example, some people might say, oh, we're going to focus on reflection. How are we going to promote reflection for now? That's already a very big thing. No? Or if we want to say, we want to train our teachers to be better designers of learning, that's also already a very good objective. Sometimes what happens is that people get discouraged because they want to do everything. But I think one of the things I'd like to ask you is, among the ideas, among the possible ways of moving forward, which areas do you think would be the most interesting or the most urgent, no, given your context? Okay, so okay, I will now move on. No?
Sorry, one question
I-
in chat box, please. And
Okay,
another question
uh,
from the offline later. You can start with
okay.
the chat box.
What should teachers do to help students change roles? That's a great question. No? The point we want to communicate to our educators is that the role you play shapes and influences the role that the students will play. So if I'm always playing the expert, then the students will do nothing but accept everything I say as fact. No? But if I'm a designer of learning, so that I make my students find out the answers on their own. For example, I say, for this particular task, you can actually use ChatGPT. For example, you can say that. No? So ask ChatGPT a good prompt, construct a prompt that will give you the best answer. So you're making them discover things on their own. No? So instead of telling them the answer, you're asking discover it and also to evaluate the answer they get. No? So the roles we play will actually send the cue to our students on what role they should play. So if we want them to change their role, we have to change our role. If we don't want our students to be passive, then we cannot be expert, performer, or inspector. We have to try to be a designer of learning, facilitator of reflection, no? And finally, coach of action. For example, this particular Zoom, no, it's easier for me to just finish my lecture. No? But I don't know if you notice, I would stop once in a while, no, and ask you questions because I'm trying to facilitate reflection. No? I've designed my talk in such a way that I'm not just going to give you all the lecture first, and then we have a Q&A, which is the traditional way. No? I've cut up the lecture or the input so that I'll give you time to think. No? When I say, do you have questions? You're actually thinking, even if you don't ask questions. No? So I've designed your experience in such a way that there are pockets and opportunities for you to just pause for a while and to think about the ideas that I've talked to you about. No? So that's one example, very simple example of designing the learning, designing the experience, and facilitating reflection. No? Okay. The next question here is, what does a teacher do so that she can carry out expected roles as a designer, facilitator, coach? So the book goes through the elements of experience, reflection, and action. And for this morning, I will focus on reflection, but that's where the tips are given, very concrete, specific tips on how you can be a designer of learning, a facilitator of reflection, and coach of action. Okay. So it's an advertisement for the book. So I hope the Bahasa version will come out soon.
Okay.
So maybe we can now
One
ask the
question from
offline,
the
yes.
offline participants. We have here questions from Pak Markus, Dr. Markus Budira Harjo. Okay. Pak Markus, please.
Okay. I hope my voice is audible over there. Thank you. So here's the case, what is now taking place among us before the semester begins. We usually are in charge of auditing the semester lesson plan. And the semester learning plan must follow certain formats in which is fixed, and usually the time frame to complete the planning is not much, and especially given the fact that many of our colleagues, including me, of course, had to complete the planning for diverse classes. So there is a huge challenge here to how to juggle between the ideal forms of refraction and administrative requirements, the documentation of the semester learning plan. Because if we try to delve into more deeply of this refraction, there are ways that are not easily adjusted to the format required or mandated even by the authorities. So let me recap the question. How do we need to, what can we do to juggle between the ideal forms of refraction and the administrative requirements of semester learning plan? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very down-to-earth, very practical question, which we always get, no, whenever we give a workshop. So my question is, the required form, does it come from the government? Where does it come from?
Okay, yeah. It comes from our university as well, of course, because we are required to have similar formats used throughout the university.
Yeah. In that case, I will answer your questions on two levels. The first level is, whenever we give a workshop, we never prescribe how much to do or what to do. It's always up to the teachers. We always say the teacher is the best judge of what should be done, because you're the expert of your subject matter. You're the expert of your students. You're also the expert of your workplace. No? So you understand it better. So we don't prescribe. We only encourage teachers on their own to take what we call baby steps. No? So it's up to you to decide how to improve a little bit more. No? So for example, if you, one example of applying what we've just talked about, which does not involve changing the format, is just to say, okay, what am I going to plan for my lesson? What will I make my students do so that they will not just listen to my lectures? No? What kind of tasks? No? What kind of exercises or activities or group work, no, can I design for them? No? So that kind of improvement does not require any change in the template. No? So that's already so there are many things that teachers can already do without changing the lesson plan. No? The second thing I want to say is it really depends on the leadership of the university. No? So I think it's too premature at this point to change the format. But as I hope Senator Dharma learns more about Ignatian pedagogy, learning by refraction, maybe at a certain point, the leadership may want to champion a change, which will include a revision of the lesson plan template. Again, we're not prescribing that at this point. We're just saying that that would be a support to teachers implementing better learning by refraction, you know, later on. But again, it's a decision to be made by the leadership. So thank you very much for that question. So I think we have a couple more questions in the chat box. No? So the first one is, teachers tend to give lectures to students, but not to facilitate to learn and make the thinking process. How could this tendency be solved, Father? You know, if I can solve that problem, we have no more problem in Ateneo. But that's really the default. No, it's really up to the teachers. No, so you know, for me, my experience is that you cannot push teachers. no? We can never force teachers, no? We can only invite them. We can only encourage them and motivate them, no? Because they're the kings and queens of the classrooms, no? They can do whatever they want in the classroom, no? So I think the best way to have this, to solve this tendency, is to have sessions like this when we're talking and trying to understand why it makes sense, no? Not just to give lectures. No, for example, for me, it's very convincing to stop just giving lectures. I mean, lectures are valuable. I'm not saying we should do away with lectures completely. The point we're trying to make here is it's not enough to just give lectures, no? And for me, the most convincing argument for that is that ChatGPT will make us irrelevant. ChatGPT can give a better lecture than us, no? If the student feeds a question, no, what is IPP, etc., etc., ChatGPT may be able to give a very good answer, a very good lecture, no? So we are in danger of becoming irrelevant if we stick to just giving lectures. Content today is cheap. It is process that is precious today. So I hope that answered it. Here's the last question. Could I say that the essence of IP that I should implement is provide students rich learning experience? Reflect precisely. That's a very good summary. So provide students rich learning experiences, give them opportunity to reflect on those experiences, and to take action based on that. I just want to emphasize the action part, because usually that's what's neglected, no? One of the important insights we learned in our study of Ignatian pedagogy is the action must be taken not in the future, but now. And hopefully it can be assessed, no? So the teacher should also design the assessment in such a way that the application of the learning can be assessed now, not later on, okay? And that's also not easy to do, but this is what authentic assessment's all about. I'm sure all of you are familiar with authentic assessment, but that's another example of how a 21st century learning principle like authentic assessment is very useful and compatible with Ignatian pedagogy, okay? Thank you so much for all the questions and comments. It shows that people are really thinking about the ideas that I'm introducing here, no? And I hope that this will continue the conversation. We don't have much time left, so what I'd like to do really is to just sort of focus on reflection, no? And show you one or two videos about reflection as we understand it, no? One of the things we learned we discovered two malpractices about reflection in Ignatian pedagogy. As I said earlier, we interviewed a lot of practitioners, no? We looked at their practices and we discovered two malpractices or two misunderstandings of reflection. The first is reflection should always be spiritual or religious, no? That was the understanding before, that I'm teaching math, but for my students to do reflection, they have to reflect spiritually and morally, no? But that's not the reflection of Ignatian pedagogy, no? It's possible to do that, but we should not force it. It's not the only kind of reflection. The second problem we found was already brought up earlier. Should reflection happen only after experience? No. Reflection should happen anytime during the learning and teaching cycle. Sometimes it's planned by the teacher, like when I say, okay, let's stop for a while and think about the ideas I mentioned, no? Or sometimes a student just reflects on his or her own, no? So reflection should always be encouraged the whole time, no? During the learning process. As I said, experience, reflection, and action are not chronological events, no? They don't come one after the other. They are not even separate events, no? They are distinct components, no, of Ignatian pedagogy, but they can happen all at the same time, okay? So let me focus now on reflection, no? Again, we won't have time to really learn this, to learn everything, but I think in social media, the age of social media and the age of generative AI, reflection is a most endangered species, no? There is just no time to reflect anymore, no? And people don't feel the need to reflect anymore because all the answers are found in the internet and ChatGPT. But precisely because it's an endangered species, all the more, no, all the more is reflection important today. When you think about it, if we don't design reflection in the classroom, when else will the students reflect? There's no other time. When else will the students learn how to reflect? They won't learn how to reflect during their break time, during their lunch time. They're always on their devices. They won't be able to reflect on their own. We have to teach them to reflect. No? We have to give them time to reflect, which means we have to waste time, no? So that they will learn how to reflect. If it's important, then we should spend time, no, teaching them how to do reflection. So again, let me share with you a short video about reflection as we understand it in Ignatian pedagogy.
Designing reflection. Reflection is one of the defining features of learning by refraction. But how exactly are we teachers supposed to get our students to reflect? The problem with reflection is that you can't force it. As the saying goes, you can lead the horse to the water. Well, you know the rest. Teachers can't make their students reflect. They can only invite them to reflect or provoke them into doing it. In most classrooms, reflection happens only by accident. But if we want to increase the chances of students reflecting, we can't just leave it to chance. We need to prepare ahead of time and design the class in such a way that it becomes more likely that our students will engage in reflection. Where do we teachers begin? First of all, we need to take seriously our role as facilitators of meaning making. Here are 3 big ideas that we need to understand in order to facilitate reflection. If reflection leads to understanding, we need to know what it looks like and sounds like. Let's begin by clarifying what reflection is not. Reflection is not recall or reaction. Too often when we want our students to reflect, we ask them questions like, "What happened?" or "What struck you?" These questions merely ask our students to recall or to react, not to reflect. If we want them to reflect, we need to ask them to make connections among the things that they've learned and to organize them. Only with connection and organization can meaning emerge. This is big idea number 1. Big idea number 2. There is more than one way of reflecting. A lot of people have the mistaken notion that reflection always has to be about something spiritual, or at least about values. That's fine if that's the reflection that comes out of the content. But sometimes, topics in, for instance, math, do not lend themselves to this specific type of reflection. In fact, reflecting about spiritual or moral matters is just one of 3 types of reflection. Let's call it personal reflection. Personal reflection refers to the kind of reflection about the value and significance of what has been learned with regard to oneself and or the world. The question we ask is, why have I learned this? What for? What does it mean for me? What could be its significance or value? Here's an example of a personal reflection. After studying Darwin's theory of biological evolution, students discuss what impact this theory might have on their perspectives about themselves, about life, or their religious beliefs. This is an example from a science class, but one that can naturally lead to this personal type of reflection. A second and more basic type of reflection is conceptual reflection. Here we look at the facts and concepts that we've learned and think about how they are connected to one another. We also connect them to other ideas or network of ideas within the subject area and beyond. A grand narrative or big picture is made accessible for organizing and making sense of the new things that students learn. The question we ask here is, what have I learned? And how are they connected to one another and to other things that I have learned as well? As a fitting culmination to a science lesson on ecosystems, a teacher may ask students to reach a consensus on a question like, do species survive more as a result of competition or cooperation? Their answer will allow them to draw explicit connections among such concepts as food webs, consumer types such as herbivore, carnivore, omnivore, etc., habitat, and ecological niche, which is the role of organisms within the ecosystem. Finally, the third kind of reflection we call metacognitive. When we reflect metacognitively, we reflect about the learning process itself, what helped and what hindered it. This kind of reflection gives us an insight into the kind of thinking and knowing that is practiced in a particular discipline, like science, literature, math. Here, the question we ask is, how have I learned? What helped and hindered me? What does this experience tell me about thinking and knowing in this discipline? After discussing a Shakespearean sonnet in detail, students are asked to name the things that help them interpret and understand the poem. The point here is not that we should have all three types of reflection, but that we shouldn't be a one-trick pony. There are different ways of reflecting, and we should design the type of reflection that is most suitable to what we want our students to learn: personal, conceptual, or metacognitive. Finally, big idea number 3. In order to design for understanding, the teacher needs to formulate a possible insight, an understanding that you hope your students will reach as a result of their reflection. Your students may reach a totally different insight, or even one that's much better than what you've prepared. But unless the teacher has identified a possible insight, reflection will probably not happen. Reflection is more valuable today than ever before. For this reason, we teachers cannot take it for granted. We need to design it and scaffold it for our classes. But most importantly, we need to model it. Unless teachers themselves practice reflection, it will be less likely they'll be able to lead their students to do it.
Okay, so I'm gonna just pause here for a while to see if there are reactions or questions, in relation to reflection. Was there anything that you found interesting or that needs explanation? There's a question here about the slides and the videos. I will send the slides to the organizers. The videos are actually available online, so I will also share the links to the videos. Let me just respond to another question online. How do we develop the concern of the students for social justice and ecological problems, activities outside class? That's possible, but also inside class. It doesn't have to be outside the class, to promote the student social justice and concerns. Okay, here's a question to clarify. What do we mean by metacognitive reflection? So the video talks about 3 kinds of reflection. The first one is when we say, for example, we learned, let's say, polynomials in maths. What's the point of learning polynomial? What's the significance? How can I use that? What's the value of that? That would be personal reflection, which is about the impact of the learning on the person's life. So that would be one example of reflection. The second type is conceptual, when you organize and connect things. So for example, instead of just learning facts and concepts, I'm able to connect them to one another, so I get a bigger picture. So for example, I learned all these terms about ecology, right? Earlier, that I learned about, herbivores and carnivores and so on and so forth. But maybe my understanding that comes out of it, the fruit of my reflection, is that all of them have to they don't compete. They should cooperate with one another for everyone to survive. So that's one possible insight, one possible fruit of conceptual reflection. I don't just remember the facts, what they mean, but somehow I connect them and they give me an understanding of the bigger picture. Now, the question here is, what do we mean by metacognitive reflection? Metacognitive refers to the process of thinking and knowing. The example in the video is about literature. That you can study meter, you can study rhyme and rhythm and so on and so forth in a Shakespearean poem, for example. But maybe the metacognitive reflection that the structure of a poem can help us understand its meaning. That would be because it tells us what to do in the discipline of literature. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. Okay, so again, the point there is not that you have to have all three, but there are different ways of reflecting, and it certainly does not have to be spiritual. It does not have to be spiritual. Should students' written reflections be read and commented by the teacher in class? If you can, if you have time, but I think teachers are very overworked already. So you don't really have to require written reflections. But a reflection can be done in a discussion. You can have a class discussion, it can be a reflection. What's important here is that we design it so that it's part of the class. If we don't plan for it, it will not happen. It will not happen. Okay. So yeah, so I'm glad that a number of you have said we have to stretch our horizon of possibility for reflection. There are many ways of reflecting. It's not just spiritual, it's not just moral. Just reflecting leads to understanding. So if I understand a lesson, that means I've reflected. It doesn't have to be spiritual. If I reflect on its impact in my life, and that's first knowing and learning the discipline, then that's also reflection, but it's metacognitive technical. I don't expect you to master it in just one sitting, but the point here is you need to design reflect happen, and the best way to do it is to formulate what we call an insight. Here, the example I use, that understanding the structure of a poem can help you. Knowing the structure of the poem can help you understand its meaning. That's an insight. That's an insight. So what I'd like to do is show you an example, a video that talks about what an insight is, because if we want our students to reflect, we have to plan it. And the best way to plan it is to formulate an insight. And formulating an insight is not an easy thing to do, okay? Now, here's a good question. Does every class meeting have to involve reflection? The answer is no. First of all, I don't think it's boring to have reflection, because that's when it becomes meaningful. That's what reflection is, meaning making. So if reflection is done well, that's when the learning becomes meaningful. So it's not boring, but it doesn't have to happen in every class. The guideline we give our teachers is, at least for a topic or for a unit, which may involve 3 or 5 classes, you should at least have one opportunity for reflection. It can be in the beginning, it can be in the end, it can be in the middle. It's really up to the teacher. But we don't say you're required to reflect every single class. At least for reflection, okay? So please, that's the other misunderstanding that we discovered, that reflection has to be done in every meeting. No, that's not required. No, that's not required. And that's not desirable either, okay? So let me now go, I want to show you the last video about formulating insight, and we're going to end there with a discussion there. Okay. So, okay.
Formulating insights for reflection. How do we come up with insights? To do that, we need to be clear about what insights are and are not. Insights have three characteristics. Let's call them the 3 Ds of formulating insights. First, an insight is not a definition. It is not a self-evident statement of fact. An insight provokes thought and talk. Ideally, it should pique our interest because it may be controversial. An insight encourages us to rethink and ask questions. In short, it is debatable. Here's an example of a statement that is not debatable. Plot refers to the sequence of events in a narrative. That's a definition that doesn't require any reflection. Compare that to this. Every single element in the story must contribute to the author's intention, be it a message or an experience. Compared to the first one, this second statement qualifies as being debatable. Secondly, an insight is not just an opinion or a subjective feeling. It should be a claim or an assertion that can be supported by reason and especially by what students have learned in the class. So the second characteristic of an insight is that it should be defensible. If a student claims, "I like this poem just because," that doesn't sound at all like the fruit of any reflection. She has no intention of defending her claim, so there can be no further discussion of the matter. Finally, and this is the most important characteristic of an insight, it should be deep diveable. An insight should deal with assumptions and principles found at the heart of the subject matter or at the core of the discipline. It offers a framework that invites the learner to a deeper understanding and that leads to further qualifications and nuancing as our understanding deepens. For example, one insight may start out this way: history is always an interpretation. But as one learns more about history, this insight may develop into something like, history is always an interpretation, and the interpretation that prevails is that of the winners. So next time you're going to try your hand at formulating an insight for your class, remember the 3 Ds of insights. They should be debatable, defensible, and deep diveable. Preparing insights ahead of time will make it more likely for students to reflect. With an insight in mind, the teacher will be better able to recognize opportunities for reflection as they arise in class. If we teachers are serious about our students engaging in reflection, we need to do our homework and design it, or else it won't happen. But there is one other benefit to designing reflection ahead of time. The insights we come up ahead of time can also help focus our course better by prioritizing which content to use and which learning tasks to assign our students. A target insight in mind will guide us in the choice of content that we will include in the class. Going back to our example from history, if our insight is about history as interpretation, we would prioritize historical events whose interpretations might be more relatively contested in order to lead our students to understand the subjective nature of history. One such example would be the oral Aboriginal accounts of what happened to the so-called stolen generations of Australia, when Aboriginal children were systematically separated from their families, and how these accounts were excluded from the official historical narrative until recently. Moreover, instead of simply lecturing about the stolen generations of Australia, students could be provided 2 different accounts of the same event and asked to compare the 2. If designed properly, reflection can make all the difference, not only in the way the students learn, but also in the way teachers teach.
Okay, so maybe we can ask for questions and comments first in the chat box or those who are offline. if there are questions in response to the video that I showed you about formulating insights.
The
So take your
offline
time to think about
participants,
it.
if any.
Yeah.
Bapak Ibu, silahkan. Seandainya ingin menyampaikan pertanyaan.
So if I may just
Okay,
sort of
one
recap.
from offline
Okay, go ahead.
participant. Okay, I think it's Father Hendra. Okay, we will wait for the microphone.
Yes, yeah. Thank you very much for the explanation for Father Jonico. Maybe I want to ask or to clarify about the reflection and also the insight that you just explained to us, because there are like 3 levels or 3, I don't know, criterias. So the question is that is it does it need to be we need to be aware of the level of our student first, so that for the, let's say, the reflection, the personal or the metacognitive, it's based on the level of our student, either based on their age or their intellectual capability or something like that. And about the insight also, do we need to understand the context, the background of our student, because it's something, it's not easy to apply both the idea of reflection or insight that you have just discussed with us. So that's the question: the context or the levels or the backgrounds that we need to be aware of this idea, so that we can
No, thank you.
apply in
Yeah.
a more concrete way.
No,
Thank
that's
you.
a great question, no? And it's very Ignatian because as Ignatian pedagogy says, before we design a lesson or a class, it must always take into consideration the context of the students. No? So is it age appropriate? Are the students capable of appreciating it? No? So that's a common concern expressed during our workshop, saying that maybe students are too young, maybe it's too complicated. No? But actually, in our experience, even young children are capable of reflection. No? What is different is the wording. No? So, for example, if we say that history is always an interpretation, obviously a second grader cannot understand that. But if you say that it's important to find out who is telling the story, I think that can be understood by children. No? So the challenge for educators is how to articulate the insight in a language that is accessible to the children, no? to the age of the students and the capacity of the students. But certainly, the context and the capacity of the students should be taken into consideration. But it doesn't mean that. But young children are quite capable of reflection. In fact, there's a whole movement called philosophy for children, no? Where philosophy is being taught to children already. Of course, it's being taught in an accessible way. No? So in the same way, if we don't expect reflection from our students, they will not learn how to reflect. No? But of course, obviously, the kind of reflection that we should expect from them should be according to their age, as pointed out earlier. But please resist the temptation of saying that children are not ready to do reflection. No? Because we should teach them how to reflect, even if they're kids. But we have to use words that they understand. No? So we don't have to tell them, we want you to do a metacognitive reflection. Obviously, they will not understand that. No? But if you ask them to think, for example, how were you able to solve this problem in math? No? What helped you or what didn't help you? That's a very simple question. And hopefully their answer will be an insight that is metacognitive, that has something to do with how they learned, how they thought in math. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. Here's another question from Dr. Sarkim. I used to think that my reflection is undebatable because it's, yes. Yeah, so I'd like to thank you for pointing that out, because sometimes when we think our reflection is not debatable, then you don't need reflection. It's a fact. What do we do with facts? Facts we just accept. No? But a reflection should be debatable, defensible, debatable. Those three criteria, those three Ds, are actually the elements of critical thinking. No? When we want our students to become critical thinkers, we want them to be able to contest and interrogate an idea, to debate it. We want them to be able to defend ideas through reason, no? Support their claims with evidences, no? And argument. And third, we want them to think even more deeply. So the three Ds, which are the criteria for formulating insights, are actually the elements of critical thinking. So earlier we were saying, how do we help our students become critical thinkers? By designing reflection, no? According to these three Ds. No? And I think that way they will really become critical thinkers. No? From Katharina, it seems to me that it is not easy to formulate insight which meet three criteria, especially for the course that more procedural, such as accounting. How to solve this problem? I completely agree. It's not easy to formulate insight for any subject, for any discipline. We're not used to it. No? We're not used to thinking that way. No? But accounting, there are many possible insights for accounting. No? It depends on what you want to say. So one tip, I think, for formulating an insight is to ask yourself, I'm going to teach my students debit, credit, balancing, and other concepts in accounting. But what is the one message about accounting that I want them to learn, to remember? So what is the insight I want them to have about accounting? If you're not an expert in the field, it's hard to formulate an insight. But if you've been teaching accounting for many years, there must be one big idea, one big message you want to communicate to them. And I would like to propose to you that that is your insight. No? Even if your subject is procedural or skills-oriented, there's always an insight. For example, in physical education, physical education is about skills in athletics and so on and so forth. They have to practice and so on and so forth. But maybe a particular instructor in physical education might want to say, the one message I want them to learn this year is that physical fitness can build self-esteem. That's a fantastic personal insight. No? So everything he will do in class, everything he or she will do in class should be pointing towards that message. That physical fitness will build self-confidence and self-esteem. Now, remember earlier in the video, it said that preparing an insight will help students reflect and learn better. But preparing an insight will also help you design your class better. So if I'm a PE instructor and my insight is, I want my students to understand that physical fitness will lead to psychological stability or esteem, then the way I organize my class, no, the topics I will choose, the tasks I will design for them to do must sort of lead to that insight. No? So there are two benefits to formulating insights. The first is it helps promote reflection. But secondly, no, it also focuses your course. I hope that's helpful. Here, I wondered if the personal reflection is not debatable, while metacognitive reflection is debatable. Is it right? I'm not sure what you mean by not debatable. No, but any insight is a claim. No, it's a claim. So, if, for example, the example we used earlier, it's not debatable. I don't know exactly what you have in mind, but for example, if an insight is not debatable, for example, water boils at 100 degrees centigrade, that's not debate. That's not an insight. That's a fact. No, what will the student do with that? The student will just accept and remember it. That water boils at 100 degrees centigrade. I don't need to reflect on it. Or secondly, if I say, for me, I like Shakespeare more than T.S. Eliot, just because that's my taste. That's not defensible, and that's not an insight. No? I don't have to support my claim with evidences. No? So that's not an insight. It doesn't extend the learning. No? I'm just giving you my taste. But if I say, for example, that Shakespeare is more accessible if you study the structure and the vocabulary of the time, then that's a claim. You're making an assertion, and I can actually defend that. No? So, yeah. So I just gave you examples of personal reflection and metacognitive reflection. But the idea here is that all kinds of reflection must be debatable, defensible, and deep diveable. And again, I don't expect you to completely understand that now, but I'm hoping that if the university decides to pursue going down using this approach, I think we can unpack it a bit further. But I think the most important thing I'd like to sort of communicate to you is that there are very concrete tips and strategies for promoting reflection and also for promoting action using the learning by refraction approach to Ignatian pedagogy. No? And as we continue to talk to educators from all around the world, we are learning more. No? We are learning more about reflection and action Ignatian pedagogy. So we're running out of time. So I'd just like to end with last few slides, which are like tips. No, they are tips for formulating insights. Even if you're not going to formulate insights now, maybe this might clarify. No? So the first is do not aim to be comprehensive. Do not come up with the best insight or perfect insight in the world. Focus on the one thing you would like your learners to take away from your module. So for example, I'm teaching chemistry, and I basically want my students to learn that all the elements are the same in any part of the universe. That's one of the basic ideas of physics and chemistry. No? So if that's your main idea, that's a claim. That's debatable because we're not sure. It's not been proven 100%. No, it's a way of looking at things. It's a claim made by scientists. No? That it's the same elements that you have wherever you go. No? It's a claim. So that would be an insight. At least you have a message. No? And you can make your choices about how to design your course based on your objectives and your learner's context, but guided by this one insight. No? So maybe that's a good exercise to do right now. All of you are experts of your specific disciplines, and you have favorite topics that you are teaching. What is the one thing, the one message you would like your learners to take away from your course? For me, that's a beginning of an insight. No? Okay. Now, I say beginning of an insight because the best insights, number 2, are the product of a series of revisions. No? So when you come up with one insight, that's not the finished product. You have to keep thinking about it, revising it, making it better, based on feedback about them and their actual application. So an insight is always a prototype or hypothesis that needs to be tested and revised. No? So the examples I've given you have been tested, they've been used before. So when you come up with an insight, it's good to try to use them in class, and you can improve them as you go along, and you can also improve them based on your discussion with your colleagues. And finally, insights become clearer and more useful if instead of big or often ambiguous words, we operationalize, unpack, or specify in what way and for what reason. So those are just little tips. No? But for me, the important thing now is that, the big idea that reflection won't happen if you don't plan it. And the best way to plan reflection or design reflection is to formulate insights. And there's more than one way of reflecting. Okay? Okay, so let me just... Okay, so again, a great question here from Dr. Christina. No? In terms of assessments, can we also grade a reflection if reflection on facts is debatable? Yes. As a matter of fact, if reflection is important for you, it should be part of your learning outcomes, and it should be part of your assessment, right? Not every single quiz, but at least the major assessment. Now, how do we grade something if it's debatable? You don't grade something based on the claim. You grade the reflection based on the way it's defended. No? So if a person says, this is my takeaway from the class, you should require the student to defend and support his claim. No? For example, if somebody says, for me, the survival of the species is more the outcome of cooperation rather than competition. You don't just grade that statement. You have to require students to support his claim. No? And when he supports his claim, he must use things he's learned in class. And that's how you can grade it. No? So the way he argues his insight, is it solid? Is it sound? Is he using facts and concepts that are correctly understood? No? So you can actually assess and even grade a reflection that way. Then from Stephanos, should students' reflections be taken into account in the evaluation process? Yes, I would say if it's possible, please assess it, if it's possible. Again, there are many kinds of assessment. It's possible to assess it informally, not formally. So it's really up to the teacher. No? Okay. Does metacognitive reflection lead to the process of self-regulation in learning? I'm not sure what you mean by self-regulation. Are you talking about social-emotional self-regulation? If I'm going to guess, I would say yes, no? Because if you have an insight, if you have an understanding, it should lead to action. So, for example, if I learned something deep about scientific thinking, for example, if my metacognitive insight is a scientific theory is the best possible explanation for now, because new evidences might come up. That's a metacognitive insight. This is an insight about the scientific method, that scientific theories are always thrown out the window when there are new evidences, no, that support another theory. No? If that's my insight, hopefully it will lead to self-regulation, so that when I make a claim in science, I will be humble. No? I will not say this is the last word in physics or chemistry or biology. I will always be tentative, no, in the way I make claims. So there should be an application. Okay. Well, I have to say that the questions and comments have been very excellent. No, they've been very thoughtful, and I really appreciate. No, the quality of questions and comments have really exhausted me because they made me think a lot. No, so I would really like to commend this group, and I hope that you will continue to be curious about Ignatian pedagogy. And I'm obviously biased. I'd like to propose that you pursue this approach, no, to Ignatian pedagogy, because based on the feedback we've gotten, not only from Asia, but around the world, it seems to be working. It seems to be valuable. And I'm really hoping that your school will take the lead in translating the book into Bahasa. No? And in fact, the videos can also be translated into Bahasa if that's something that you would like to do. No? So maybe I'll end my discussion there. I don't know if there are additional questions or comments from the group.
Okay, thank you very much, Father. Thank you for a very liquid and fruitful discussion. Can we give Father Johnny applause, please, or reaction on Zoom symbol, please? Okay. Yes, but we still have 14 minutes. But Father Johnny is already, having so many questions. But can we have additional question from the offline participant? Yeah, maybe the last chance for the offline participant if you still want to ask questions. Anyone? Okay. So
If you don't
because-
mind, I have a question. I have a question for people to reflect about. No?
Yes.
Basically, my question would be, given some of the ideas we talked about, do you think some of them can be helpful in improving the learning and teaching in your practice? You don't need to answer me now, but that's that question I think that that might be valuable to ask. No? Because if the answer is yes, then maybe it will really be a good idea to sort of do a deeper dive into Ignatian pedagogy, you know, and it will take more than one webinar to do that. No? And I'm sure the leadership of your school will have plans for that. But that's, I think, a good question to end our webinar on.
Okay, thank you very much once again for a very inspiring and provoking thoughts for us to be more relevant in our service to young generation using Ignatian learning.
Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, and on behalf of all of us here, it's about 100 participants, 30 in this room, and also 74 in the Zoom, 71 now. We had a grateful morning discussion with you, so thank you so much. And one thing also really helped me is that now we learn that Ignatian pedagogy relate how this pedagogy relate to the theories about learning that we learn by the day by day. So thank you so much. You connect the Ignatian pedagogy to learning concept and learning theories in a more general, broader context. And after these discussions, we are going to continue to see what we can implement. I think this is answer to your last question, right? Reflecting questions. We would like to see which one or how we can implement this new insight or this Ignatian pedagogy to our teaching, because we learn a lot. We see we renew, we rejuvenate, and we had a very insightful discussion. So when the next question is how we can implement into our teaching. This is going to be follow up with our series of workshop for this semester. And also we thank you so much for the book. We have ordered the library to purchase this book, both electronic and also physical. So I think in the following weeks we will have some of the books, so we can learn about this concept with the staff at the Faculty of Teacher Training. So thank you again. I'm sure that in the next time we will continue to discuss this IP with you, and thank you so much, and also thank you for availability to discuss in the next the translation of the book. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sakti. Before we end our session, we would like to also have a very high appreciation for the participants joining in Zoom as well as participants here offline for your enthusiasm in joining the discussion. And once again, we really say thank to Father Johnny and hope to see you in the future with our next discussion. Love from Jogja and have a very good day. Thank you.